Hey friends, welcome back to the Just As I Am podcast. It is one of your favorite friends, Nicole, and today we're just going to be doing a little catching up, so stay tuned. Hey guys, it's been a while, but you know what? I'm back and we are fixing to have a nice conversation, okay? So, the past couple of weeks for sure have been incredibly busy for me, for starters. On the last episode, if you are returning, by the way, thank you so much. I had Chloe and we discussed 8, really 9, but we're gonna say 8 women of the New Testament who deserved more credit. Not deserved, they still deserve. So, as you know, I was in Colorado for that, but now I'm back home. I got back home, went straight into work, and then have just been trying to get my life together. If you've been catching up in any sort of capacity, you know that I have been going back to school. Well, I just finished at the school that I was at. I went to community college. So if you know anything about community college, you know that it's only 2 years, right? So now I am at the point where I need to transfer. And the difficulty with this was that I was still trying to stay at my job, but wherever I was going to transfer, I would have to become a traditional student, which means that I have to actually go to class now. So that is the main problem. So ultimately, I made the decision to back out of my contract for the next school year and go and be that traditional student and go in and get my last 2 years done so then I can go back and never have to leave again. But I made the decision. I was trying to stay local. I made the decision to go to Union here in town, which has always kind of been a dream of mine that I never thought that I could obtain. But I always wanted to go to Union, one, because I've just loved it, and two, because my mom is actually a Union alumni. So that is probably the biggest reason I wanted to go to Union in the first place. But you know, dreams do come true. You can make things happen. But it was a really difficult decision for me to have to either choose work or school. And I had to do it, make that decision in a small time frame. And, you know, a lot of things that have just been shown to me is that, it's all going to work out. It's all going to work out. It's fine. One of the reasons why I never thought I would go to Union is because of the price point. It is a little on the higher side, but now that I have gotten accepted and started the process and all this other stuff, I really, compared to the original price, I got at least, let's see, I think 32,000 in scholarship type money. So, if that tells you anything, that is magnificent. That is definitely a blessing. I am so grateful for that. That took off a heavy load for me. But at the same time, I still need to work so I can have some kind of money to pay for insurance and all that stuff. So, my plans are if I have the ability to either go back and sub at school or do aftercare, after school, whatever. I even got offered a job at a local church that would be part-time if my classes, were to work with it. So I was like, okay, I keep getting one sign after another that this is all going to work out. It's going to be fine. We're going to make it. But anyways, that is the main catching up. I don't have much more other than that, I guess. Orientation is next week, so that's exciting. I get to find out my classes. And then not this weekend, but next weekend, we're leaving for the kids are going to church camp again, so I'm going to go tag along and help out with that. But yeah, but what I wanted to come on here and really talk about was this past week, okay? This past week, last night, we just finished VBS for this year. And I really think that it was a really good VBS this year. I loved it. The kids were enthusiastic. They loved it. Everybody who participated was so great and helpful and willing to achieve the same goal. But this year, Lifeway's VBS theme was Magnified. And I honestly learned a few extra things as well. So the main thing was magnified, but what we were magnifying was that it was discovering the bigness of God in the smallest of things. And the verse for the whole shebang was Psalm 34:3. And I liked the King James Version, but they also used, I guess NIV. I'm not really sure. But it was, "Oh, magnify the Lord with me. Let us exalt his name together." And I liked the King James Version because the theme was magnified and it had the word magnify in it. So that was just my personal preference. But the kids learned it fairly quick. I mean, it was really, they caught on really fast, which honestly, it was a little bit of an easier verse this year. I will say that. But we talked about so many things. So we magnified that God sees us, that God cares about us, that God loves us, that he is faithful, he will never break a promise. I'm trying to think of the other day. It'll come to me. But those were the main things that we focused on. The first story that we talked about was Jesus and the children. And if you know, you know, Jesus loved the children. So what we talked about was Jesus was somewhere teaching, and these parents kept bringing their children. They wanted the children to see Jesus, and they wanted Jesus to bless them. Well, this really bothered the disciples. They thought Jesus was too big, too important for the children, which, kind of pinched a nerve with Jesus. And he was like, let them come. And then it talked about, the childlike faith and all of that stuff. Day 2, we talked about Jesus calms the storm. And we discussed how Jesus was teaching, because, Jesus, number one teacher, right? Jesus was teaching, and then he got on the boat with the disciples to go to the other side of the lake. And during this voyage from one side of the lake to the other, Jesus went downstairs or wherever in the cabin and laid his head on a cushion and got all cozy and went to sleep. But while Jesus was sleeping, this storm begins to rage. And the disciples, as I sure would, I'm not gonna lie, the disciples are freaking out because the winds are strong, the waves are just raging, and water's getting into the boat. All the things that you do not want to happen when you're on a boat. And they're panicking and they go down and they wake Jesus up and they're like, "How are you asleep when we, are on the verge of dying?" I don't know. Like they were incredibly scared. So Jesus wakes up, goes to the deck or wherever, puts out his arms, says, "Silence, be still." I feel like that is so iconic. The children and I, that was our favorite part, putting our arms out and going, "Silence, be still." And everything became calm. The wind stopped, the waves ceased, they leveled out. And then he gets on to the disciples again and he's like, "You still don't have any faith? Come on, guys." One of the funny things about this was I asked the kids, I was like, "Have you ever been afraid of storms? Raise your hand if you've ever been afraid." And I can definitely say that I am afraid of storms to an extent, for sure. I mean, I'm not going to lie and say that I've never been afraid or I'm not afraid. Storms, can be dangerous and scary. And a lot of the kids were like, "Yeah." And then I had this one and he goes, "Not me." Mind you, this is first and second grade. I think he just finished first grade. And he said, "I've never been scared." He said, "I saw a picture of a tornado. Didn't scare me one bit." Like, it was just, I said, "Okay, let me step back." And then somebody was telling me later, they're like, "But isn't he afraid of the dark?" I guess that's a whole nother story for a whole nother time. I don't know, but he was bound and determined and 100% serious that he was not afraid of storms. I mean, you go, little guy. I'll let you have that one. But so that was day 2. Day 3, we discussed the woman at the well. And I was telling the kids how, I said, "What are we?" I said, "We live here. So what does that make us?" And they said, "Tennesseans." And I was like, "Yeah, what country do we live?" Trying to get Americans out. And, finally we got to, "Well, we're Americans. We're Americans." And we talked about how Jesus was a Jew and how the woman at the well was from Samaria. So that makes her a Samaritan. And we discussed how Jews and Samaritans, they did not rub elbows. They did not, I mean, they have nothing to do with each other. They steer clear. And so we had the story about how she went to go get water and then Jesus went and sat with her. And then he asked her for a drink of water. And that just blew her mind because why would a Jew be talking to her, a Samaritan woman? And then, it went into the whole conversation of, "Can I have a drink of water?" And she was like, "I mean, you don't have a bucket or anything to get the water. You don't," and he explained how, this water, anybody who drinks of this water will always be thirsty, but anybody who drinks of the living water will never thirst again. And, we dove into that conversation and story. And then we talked about how she was like, "Oh, man," and went and told the whole neighborhood, told the whole town. And they came and they wanted to listen. So that is kind of, which Jesus can do anything. He is the Son of God. He has that power, that ability. But anybody, one person talking to someone who you wouldn't typically talk to, or somebody outside of your, type of people, whatever you want to describe it as, just having that simple conversation can make such an impact and change so much for the better. So that was day 3. Day 4, we talked about Jesus and Nicodemus. And it took a lot, but the children were finally able to pronounce Nicodemus. It was so funny because whenever we would recap, I would try to get them to tell me before I would give any clues or anything. And we would say, it's always Jesus. Jesus is even if Jesus isn't in the story, it's always Jesus. But luckily this time Jesus was in fact in the story. But we talked about Jesus, and I said he had a long name that was kind of hard to pronounce. And I was like, okay, it starts with the N. And then they would just kind of be. And one of them goes, I want to say Noah, but I know that's not it. I said, yeah, Noah was way before Jesus' time. And I said, Nick. And then we went, Nick. And then it finally, Nicodemus. So we were like, yes. But we discussed Nicodemus. First, we talked about nocturnal things. So we talked about how nocturnal animals or creatures are creatures that are the opposite of most creatures, I would say definitely humans, but then at the same time, we have people who work at night. So we'll just work with that. But we discussed how nocturnal things are things that rest during the daytime and are most active at night. So, like owls and crickets and bats, things like that, we discussed were, nocturnal. And this all led into our lesson and our story because Nicodemus was, in fact, a Jewish teacher. But the time of day in which Nicodemus went to go visit Jesus was at night. Nicodemus was different than all the other Jewish leaders and the Pharisees, I guess you could say, because Jewish Nicodemus went and listened to Jesus' teachings versus, trying to accuse Jesus of being wrong and teaching things that were not true or accurate. But Nicodemus was he had a very, I feel like, good relationship with Jesus. Nicodemus was, in fact, one that when Jesus was crucified, he, helped wrap him up and put him in the tomb. Nicodemus, I've grown to learn a little bit more about Nicodemus and kind of want to even learn more and more about Nicodemus. So maybe we'll talk about Nicodemus later. But that was day 4. And day 5, we talked about something that I do constantly. We talked about worry. The story was about Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, which it wasn't the whole everything that he taught, but it was the section about worrying. And it was about how, God even takes care of the birds and the flowers. And they are not equal to us humans, but yet God still takes care of them. So it was, why worry about clothes and food when God is going to take care of you? God keeps his promises. He's faithful. Everything that he says in the Bible, every promise that he makes, he's going to keep. And that was, I really tried to push that because, we discussed worries that the kids have. And the kids are going to, like I said, we're going to church camp next weekend. And so 2 of the worries were about that. One was that they don't have everything they need for camp. And then the other one was she's going to, worry about her mom and miss her mom while she's gone. The other one I had, he just said, he just worried about his siblings. So there was that. But after that, I even let my helper tell us something that she worried about, and then I listed a good handful of things that I typically worry about. But then after we listed our worries, I let them come up and I let them pick. I had 3 strips of paper. One was big, one was medium, and one was small. So they would pick up the size of paper according to how big they felt that worry was. And after all that was said and done, I just encouraged the kids, good reminders about how we can find all of God's promises in reading our Bible, and, you know, even how He will fulfill those promises. And I told them, I said, I've worried about all of these things, but God has shown me, in small, medium, and large ways that He keeps His promises, that He's going to be faithful, that He's going to take care of us, that we will never have to worry about anything. We shouldn't have to worry about anything because He has us taken care of. He has us covered because, He sees us, He loves us, He cares for us, all of the things. And so that was, I don't know how deep it was for the kids, but that was really deep for me because I was definitely speaking for my soul on that one. But that ended our lessons and our stories. Now, we did a few different things. We played a few different games, and so I'll tell you about that and the crafts we made. We played so in the video, you have a video every day. You have a story, and then you have a video snippets every day to see. It's like, watching your favorite show on TV, but they're only like 2 or 3 minutes long, and then you just come back the next day to figure it out. Short story, So I believe it was a brother and a sister and 2 friends, but it was Jack and June. I did not think anything of it, or else that's what I would have named them. But when we did Bible recap, we had my teaching kit came with this game where you have 2 teams and they each have a squirrel, and then they climb up the tree, and whoever makes it to the top, wins. Well, I named the squirrels Jack and Jenny, and then one of them said, "Don't you mean Jack and Jill?" And I said, "No, this is Jack and this is Jenny." They loved that. There was another game like that was on a spider web, and they were trying to get safe instead of to the spider. So if they got it right, they would move one space closer to safe, and if they got it wrong, they would move towards the spider. Luckily, nobody had to go to the spider. So there was that. 2 crafts that we did in class. A lot of the things that we did, I should have said the theme was Magnified, but the real thing, like I said, but has anybody ever seen Journey 2, or It's a Bug's Life, or I think somebody said The Lost or something, I don't know, anyways, but it's essentially all of the small creatures that you can go and find outside, bugs, animals, plants, all the things, they are just blown up huge to like at least human size. I mean, let's be real. We're gonna make them not big enough, but not too big. But it was really cute. So a lot of the things that when we had VBS work nights was the tissue paper flowers, and I was like, one night, I mean, these are simple enough. One night we're gonna make these with the kids. And so I found some tissue paper we had in the resource room. My handy dandy helper got us some pipe cleaners, and we I got the tissue paper, cut it to a good size. They picked it out. We had to work with the girls. You can tell have been a little crafty. The boys we had to work with a little bit. Um, but essentially, how you make a tissue paper flower is depending on what size flower you want. You would probably take um, a regular sheet of tissue paper and cut it in half and use that size. That's probably a good size to be. The bigger, the less control you have. I guess the more sheets you need also. But anyways, so you take it and you fold it like a paper fan. So you fold it zigzag, and then you take a pipe cleaner and you put it right in the middle of your zigzag folded strip, and then therefore you have two sides. So then you essentially just pull from the middle. You start with the top and pull it towards the middle, one sheet at a time, and it'll make a flower. And I learned that a couple of years ago, and I had a ton of those left over from a couple of years ago when we had another outdoorsy theme. I think it was in the wild. I had a lot of those. Um, but the kids loved it. They loved picking their colors. They loved the aftermath, their final creation. Another craft that we did was we made the watercolor. Oh goodness, watercolor coffee filter butterflies. There we go. Watercolor coffee filter butterflies. Say that 5 times fast. Anyways, so we found some coffee filters. I already had some clothespins, and we used some of the pipe cleaners that my handy dandy helper got. And essentially, so what we did this over because my children were notorious for talking and not staying on task, so it took us a lot longer to get things done, which is normal for me. I mean, I get it, but at the same time, I'm like, guys, let's focus here, okay? But so we did the flowers over a 2-day period, and we did the butterflies over a 2-day period. So when we made our butterflies, I know some of y'all are probably gonna go, ooh, but it just works easiest. We eat snack in our classroom. So usually I bring towels, but this time I had a pretty tablecloth from the Dollar Tree, and I used that as like our picnic blanket, and they would eat snack off of it, and we would do crafts on it. So we did that in the floor. They each got their coffee filter. We colored it with just some washable markers, and then we sprayed them. We probably could have done, we did between 8 and 10 sprays, and then we let them dry overnight. And then the next day we came back and we scrunched them up, put on the clothespin, and we, sorry about that, I did not realize my mic was loose. Anyways, we scrunched them up, put our clothespin on, and then we rolled up our antenna and stuck them on there, and then they wanted little faces to go on it. Of course, your butterfly has to have eyes to see and a mouth to eat, right? So, of course, we had to put faces on it. But they absolutely loved that. I made them keep everything in their bags because I got in bags for them to decorate. So they kept everything that they had gotten throughout the week and put in there. So their flowers, I told them, I was like, all right, now go put your butterfly in your flower. And they just thought that was so fantastic and magical and wonderful and beautiful. But those are the main things that we did. We also had a day where I had a sad fish. He was false. He was on one side of the room. And then I had a true fish, and he was happy, and he was on the other side. and I would tell them a fact, and they would have to determine whether it was true or false and go to that fish. And they loved that. Um, One day I had one kiddo, and she is incredibly smart. She's probably too smart for her own good. One day, I promise y'all, she will be like some kind of engineer, scientist, astronaut. She's fixing to find the cure to something, okay? I don't know, but stay tuned for that. Anyways, so we were talking, and we were talking about how big God's love is for us. How big, how deep, how wide, just all the things. How tall. And one of the things was I would read the verse, and then they would write their interpretation of that verse describing how big, how deep, how tall, whatever, how wide. And one of them was about the depths of the ocean. And I asked him, and I said, how deep do you think the ocean is? And she goes, I mean, in her just little professor way, she goes, well, the Mariana Trench is the deepest part of the ocean. And I said, okay, write that for your thoughts. And she goes, how do you spell Mariana? And I said, I don't know, Marianna or something. And she goes, why don't you just look it up? And I said, well, I just sounded it out. I said, just write your thoughts, okay? Oh goodness, she's a wild one, but she is so smart. But they also, in crafts, learned about, they did learn, but they created like bug eyes, and they created their own well, like the woman at the well. What else? They created door hangers. The last night they made these little butterfly cross things. They had pipe cleaners and they had beads. And the beads, every letter stood for the letter in the verse. So it was, let's see, what is the actual NIV version? Proclaim the Lord's name with greatness or something. Let us exalt his name together. I could be butchering that so bad. But anyways, every letter in that was on their thing for the verse. Then they learned about Thailand and missions, crafts. I already said crafts. Snack. If you ask, probably 9 out of 10 children will tell you snack is their favorite. They will go hard for some snack time. And then music. The music was pretty good this year. I will say that my shoulder blades and, I don't know, rotator cuffs, don't y'all come at me, bone and joint people, but I was like, this is wearing me out. Like, I'm gonna need a replacement after this. But the music was really good. There was this one song called Spinnin', and that was their favorite. And we had a ton of boys in 4th through 6th grade, and that was their favorite part. And every time, because it would be spinning, spinning, spinning around, and then you would make a spinning motion with your arms the first 2 spinnings, and then the spinning around, you would spin your whole body around. And every time it got to that point, you would hear them go, yay! And then they would just continue, and you're like, y'all are so goofy. And I would not think something like this would really get y'all so giddy and happy, but you know what? I'm here for it. Fantastic. But we also had what do you even call them? The blow up costumes of a frog. And Jennifer named him Ribbity Skibbity. And he would come out and dance and do all the things. And the kids absolutely loved him. The little ones were not so sure about him the first couple of nights, but after that, they got used to him and they were like, oh, where's he at? But there was that. And then I also had, thank you, Target clearance. I got in the Easter section a while back an Easter basket. It's felt, but it's a frog. And I named it Roberta. And the kids are like, no. But they loved her. She was beautiful. And I had one of the snacks they made was um, they had honeycomb cereal, but they put it in the Ziploc bag and put a pipe cleaner, tied it in the middle, and then made it into so it was a butterfly. So I put mine was pink, so I took it and I put a bow on the handle, and so she was beautiful. She was stunning with her bow in her hair, and she held all the good secrets. Like, she had all the good things. She was very helpful to me during VBS. But yeah, so that's, I mean, my mom worked super hard and she honestly made a whole lot of cool stuff. She has, we're old school around here, she has an overhead projector that she'll blow stuff up on so she can trace it out on paper on the wall or cardboard or something. And she she made acorns from stuff she got from the Dollar Tree. She she cut out a squirrel out of cardboard and painted it, and then she cut some frogs out and painted them. And there was this blue one, and I love these frogs. There was this blue one, and he was just happy go lucky, had a smile on his face, stunning. And then there was this other one, and it was like a dark, not quite forest green, but dark green and brown, and his eyes were rolled, and he just looked like, and I love that frog. It is a mood. It is fantastic. I said we are leaving him out all year long. But I didn't go too intense on decorations this year. I really feel like I haven't the past couple of years. And I'm kind of disappointed in myself, but yet I really kind of liked how my room turned out this year because it was simple, but it was well decorated, I feel like. But most of my stuff came from the Dollar Tree, and if it didn't really come from the Dollar Tree, it probably came from Joann. And I love Joann. Okay, so here's the thing. I know craft people call her Joann because that's who she is, but Joann's sounds so much better. So there's that. But I hated to see her go, but boy, did she go at a perfect time. That's all I'm saying. VBS, look, God knew what he was doing with that. So, but I got a ton of stuff from Joann at a really good price because, you know, Joann went out of business, and so everything was marked down. But I got two different types of material. Ooh, I don't know if y'all can hear that. Hopefully you didn't. But it's not, one of them is like tulle, and then it has like little flowers, not embroidered, but like the iron on type things, you know what I mean? All over it. And then Michael's had their stuff on sale. It was like these little bugs with the wires on them, like you could put in your flowers or something. So I got some bumblebees, ladybugs, dragonflies. All these actually had bouquets, and instead of flowers, they were butterflies. So I put all of that all over my tulle and then hot glued those butterflies all over it as well, which I probably have become obsessed with hot glue over the past little while, but I'm not ashamed of that. What else did I do? I got some of just the green leafy vines from Joann, and I put those on top of my bulletin boards. That really added some pizzazz. I loved that. I threw all my flowers everywhere. And then Hobby Lobby had this, in their bulletin board section, they had this pack of like gnomes, but it was gnomes on snails, gnomes with butterfly, like all kinds of stuff. And so I hid those all over the room. And that was really, I mean, that was the main thing. The other material I got was, it wasn't tulle, but it was kind of like made like tulle. I can't think of what to call it. But it was a deep blue, but then it was covered with all kinds of butterflies on it. And so I wanted that to be kind of fluffy over my doorway. And so I rolled it up and I pinned it and I put it on a tension rod. And I was hoping that the pins would all just keep it like equal, but it ended up like making droops in it. But like it was cute. So I wasn't mad at that and I left it that way. But I really loved that element. And then of course I just put my VBS stuff on the wall. So there was that. I printed and cut out fairly large size bugs and put those everywhere. But I mean, that was it. And I liked it. And it was great. And the kids liked it and they thought it was cute. And they liked my corny jokes that I put on the board this year. And we finished. We did it. You can see, I posted on TikTok, I posted a video of my room, and I posted, we did, I wanted to do this is me day one, or this is me before, and this is me after. So I did it with all the teachers. I did 3 and 4's kindergarten, me, the other teacher in music. And then last night we did This Is Us after day 5. And it's pretty funny. It was, we may have over exaggerated just a little bit, but I mean, it's fun. It was funny. Yeah, we all laughed. But the kids loved it. We were told that all the kids would come home and talk about it and all the good stuff. So, I feel like this was my first year being a little more, I don't want to say involved, but like deeper, I guess. Usually I don't do the dancing, but this year I was like, let's do it. The songs weren't bad, like I said. But we just hope and we pray that the kids take something important away from it, and maybe one day they'll make a decision that will basically save their lives. So, there were so many good points this year, and yeah, I really liked a lot of the points of, not worrying, God sees us, God is faithful, all the things. So that is my recap for VBS 2025. The last thing I'm going to leave you with is, because I sure forgot to say this at the beginning, but the theme was Magnified. And we were teaching the children that Magnified has 2 different meanings. I just never thought about the second meaning really until this week. And I just want to share that with you. So, the definition that we all know is magnified, meaning making something appear larger, right? Like we have our magnifying glass. We use that to make smaller things appear larger. The other definition of magnified is to treat something or someone with greatness. Like we talk about magnifying the Lord. He is someone who's important, and we want to promote that. But we talked about the two definitions of magnified. We talked about exalting and we talked about proclaiming. So, this is your lovely reminder to be sure to magnify the Lord in any and everything that you do, and to exalt his name with us together. So, if you have had your VBS, I hope it was super successful. If you have not and your VBS is up and coming, I hope that you can have a wonderful week and a successful VBS, and that you get that VBS endurance, and that you just feel it in your heart and soul that you left something on those children's hearts and souls. So, thanks for listening. I will catch y'all on the next one.